Could you tell us where you first heard about the Peace Camp?
I was a student at Cornell University, and I was very involved in the Cornell Women's Center, and we started hearing about it and the protests and demonstrations and what it was. I probably went to my first demonstration there. It was probably 1984 at some point, where there was some big event, civil disobedience action, a big like parade or march or something. I just was there participating and in the march and cheering those who climbed the fence, etc. Well, I was very young. That would make me about 20. And I was a little bit overawed. I had been involved in political action before that, but not really in that context of the nonviolent activism. And so it was really unlike anything that I had seen before, and I was very overawed. I felt like I was about 8 years old, and I was brave enough to come back. But I was just trying to take it all in.
Yeah.
I started coming a few times, and then in my senior year I was coming a few more times. I started going there a few more times. I got braver, and I started, liking it more and more. So, and it was, not too bad of a driving distance from Cornell. So, I started going to a few of the actions over that last year in 1985. Well, I got braver because I learned, nobody's going to bite me. Nobody more politically correct than I was going to come along and bite me or anything. I mean, I felt relatively well educated given the student population at Cornell, but in turn I felt very undereducated or underexperienced compared to what I was seeing going on around me, the level of skill and knowledge and experience, where, half the time, I would try and keep the jaw up, but really it would be So I started realizing, I gradually got acclimated and probably felt that I would learn more about it the more that I came in contact with it. Up until the end of my senior year, I was just I guess you could call it a day tripper. So I didn't really have any issue. I felt increasingly comfortable being there, just, with larger numbers of women who were coming at that time. When I graduated from Cornell, I stayed at the Peace Camp that whole summer in my tent in the field. So there was a big difference. That was the summer of 1985 I was there. So once I was living there, I was more involved in the day-to-day basics. I really enjoyed getting up in the morning and making the cinnamon oatmeal with the large tubs of honey that we had and sunflower seeds, and I still to this day, it's like a comfort food. I still make that. I really enjoyed getting up and doing that as the breakfast for everyone who wanted to come and get it. And the other thing that was kind of odd for me was I actually had a job when I lived there. I had a regular job, and it was working in Trumansburg with a 4-H youth program, which meant I was working with 12 to 16-year-old boys. You can imagine what they were like. They're in Trumansburg, this recreational program. So I would, make the breakfast, the oatmeal over the fire. I'm sorry I don't have the pictures, because I do have a picture of that, sitting around the fire there over the oatmeal. But so I would do that, and then I would go down the road to Trumansburg, deal with these adolescent boys, and then come back to my tent and see what was going on. And a lot of times we were just sitting around or hanging out. Sometimes there would be meetings that I would be involved in. I usually wouldn't say much because I still never totally felt like I had a complete grasp on everything that was going on there. There was one point where I kind of discovered that I was a witch by there being other witches there, and I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know anything other than the usual, what you get from Hollywood. And I didn't know what they did in the grove of trees back there, but I kind of knew that I was the same way without even knowing what it was. I was one of them. And so I think that may have been after I moved there. Beforehand, I don't know, I had the feeling like there were kindred spirits there and it would be a good place for me to go. And I liked the kind of activism that was happening. I liked the spirituality, which I had pretty much zero of before the peace camp. And I had the time. I kind of vaguely had plans to come out here to San Francisco, but I didn't really have to be out at any particular time. I don't even know why I left. I may have had a good reason for leaving in September, but I had the summer, and it just seemed like a great idea.
What kind of rituals do you remember from that period?
I was never invited. They would all leave.
Rituals do you remember not being invited?
I don't know. I don't know what they did.
What does that mean, not invited?
They would just talk about it amongst themselves and leave out the back door.
Did you get to talk with the witches?
I was too scared. Oh yeah, that's why, another reason why I came out to San Francisco was because of discovering I'm a witch, and because the writings of Starhawk were very much in abundance. And everything she ever wrote very much resonated with me, and I knew she lived out here in San Francisco. And I'd also discovered very recently that I was an anarchist, and I always thought that was being a feminist, but then reading the description of anarchism, I'm like, well, I always called that feminism, so I guess I'm an anarchist too. I was finding out all kinds of things about myself. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to go to San Francisco, and that's why I ended up here. Yeah, there were some. I know Irani was one. Irani was very easy to talk to. She was very mellow and low-key. She did not scare me as much as... and other than her, Sky Song was always happy to talk to me. Other than those two, there were a few others that I would connect to, but I can't remember their names. There would be like group meetings about what should we do next kind of thing, and there would be like 40 to 50 women in a meeting. Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. Except these mammoth grasshoppers would like land on my tent wall and start chewing through it. The mosquitoes were big, and those grasshoppers, and they'd be laying there in your tent and they'd see it coming through. I remember, like the big marches and actions that were advertised where you get a mixed group, and a lot of these like Witness for Peace type groups would be there, so it would be both men and women, and climbing over the fence, and then there's this one action which I ended up not being there for the most fabulous part of it, but I heard about it afterwards, where women were like toning at the fence, and then the section of it fell down. Do you know what I'm talking about? And then the police couldn't arrest anyone because they hadn't touched the fence. And I missed it. And I never did any of the firewalks either. I just missed them. I was bummed about that. I don't think so. I think I just, I would go along with everyone who was going. And I've been scared of being arrested because I've had asthma my whole life, and in those days it was pretty bad, and I really was in fear of the police withholding my medication, and it could be life-threatening. So I was very afraid to be arrested, so I would not be doing civil disobedience usually. I'd be staying more back, away from the tops, singing.
Do you remember any of the songs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I started this women's singing group based on Kay Gardner's tradition of Women with Wings, and I teach them a number of songs from the Peace Camp. Well, I say from the Peace Camp. That's where I learned them.
Yeah.
Right? You know, who knows who made them? Oh, you can't kill the spirit. You can rise with the fire of freedom. So I was with the gestures, you know. The bird. Yes. Stop the fires. Yes. Yeah. The Holly Near songs. I dreamed on this mountain. What else? You know, the golden oldies. Yes, the singing was such an important part of our life there, I felt. It was the spiritually based activism, and like all those discussions we were kind of laughing about is white sugar too patriarchal? I was like right there. I was like, these are the discussions that are going to move us forward into the society we want to have. One of the first times I actually went back behind the house, and I saw the, disabled access wooden ramp. I thought that was one of the most beautiful things, and that to me was so impressive, that I was like, wow, these people are serious. People are not just giving lip service here, these like, we're actually not waiting around, we're just like doing it here, it was like, well, this is, it was good. It was like, well, I want to be a part of this. The people here are that serious about our politics.
Was consensus familiar to you?
It was, but not the way it was practiced there. No, I was like learning shit every time. First of all, I had never heard like these kind of names like sea mist. And so that alone just was like blowing me away. But it's not just consensus, it was like the process, which I have never seen equaled except for one other community of longtime nonviolent activists who've been through many campaigns together. But again, as a 20-year-old, it would like totally blew me out of the water to hear and see women, taking responsibility for a process that was going on in front of them, and just insisting that it go well and that it live up to the best process that we knew how to have. And I'd never seen that before. I don't recall daily meetings. I don't recall that. I wasn't at them, if there were. I think it was more like for a segment of time before an action was planned. There would be meetings, daily meetings. I mean, sometimes there were like, I don't know what they were called, but meetings about running the house and the land or something like that. But there would be like this big influx of lots and lots of women, and there would start to be a lot more meetings there. But yes, I still have the I have the what do you call it, that you handed out to people, the flyer, the guide to the action with the agenda of what was happening. And I recently went to a Code Pink dinner, and I shared that with them, and they were like thrilled to death to see that. And they actually incorporated some of the themes and process into other things that they did.
Do you remember the action itself?
Yeah, it was great. It was dark. There was a lot of people there, and what actually happened? I'm not remembering too many details, but what I'm remembering is this feeling of almost like a ritual sense of progressing from one thing to the next, and of this power kind of getting focused by the structure of that action. Yeah, I'd say I got somewhat involved in the anti-globalization movement. And I've recently been exploring more and more of Code Pink. That's very new for me. But Suzanne, or Sam, who's one of the integral members of that, invited me to do this presentation. They have this monthly kind of, somebody kind of tells you things, gives you a spiel, and then you have dinner. So I was the invited speaker for that meeting.
What did you present then?
On the Peace Camp.
Oh,
Well, I know
cool.
why. I know why Suzanne invited me, because they were thinking of having like an encampment in front of like somewhere, like Pelosi's office or something like that, for like half of the summer. So she wanted just some general peace camp kind of context. I had the poster that has the women's symbol with no trespassing that I saved, and pictures, and that 6 minutes to midnight handout. And I just told them about the nonviolent process. That's really hard to capture. I don't think you can really explain it to someone. I think they have to see it to really understand it, to know what it is. And about what happens when you have an ongoing presence instead of, well, you just show up for a rally and then you go home, and how this different dynamic develops, and how there's all this power that can be generated, and you draw more people in. You can be a magnet for drawing people in. And, it helps to have a very beautiful environment. I was telling them, I don't think it's a good idea to do this on concrete. Of course I was spoiled. I mean, you can't really beat that meadow in back of the house. It was a little odd presenting it, because this group, Code Pink, I mean, to my somewhat limited knowledge, does not really incorporate a lot of spirituality in its actions. And that was so distinctive about the Peace Camp.
Did you do nonviolence training at the Peace Camp in '80?
Oh yeah, I mean that was like ongoing pretty much.
Are there things that you brought from the Peace Camp into your present day life?
There are a few specifics. Like the first time I heard about Big Mountain was at the Peace Camp. A woman came and did like a slideshow on it, and I was very impressed or touched by that. And I think I got a sense of the importance of making connections and having solidarity with other struggles, and how important that is. I mean, it changed me. It caused me to develop in certain ways I wouldn't have. I don't know if I could name a specific, other than I really like that oatmeal with cinnamon, honey, and sunflower seeds. That really left its mark on me.
Did you fall in love with the Peace Camp?
No. I was too scared to approach anyone. I think I would like to say one other reason why I was so scared is because at that time I was identifying as bisexual, and that was most definitely not the thing to identify at. And I wasn't going around volunteering it, but I didn't want anyone to find out either.
Was there a dominant lesbian culture?
I thought it was open to all women.
It was, but I want to know what the perception
Yeah, if
is.
there were non-lesbians, they did not raise their heads up very high to get counted. And I wasn't going to be the one to Yeah, there were...
You sort of touched upon as well. This is
No, I didn't touch on being bisexual,
No.
but I touched upon the difference between the what we said and what we did. And if there were unspoken rules about who we were supposed to be.
Well, even sometimes they got spoken, like more than once. I was in a meeting or just hanging out with women in the living room, and someone would make a comment like, well, of course we're all lesbians here, aren't we? That was hard, but I was of course too scared to talk to anyone about it too, so.
So there's not anyone that you told when you were there?
No. I didn't tell. Are you kidding me?
Well, did you have a boyfriend while you were there?
No. No, I wasn't like hiding, concealing something that was going on really, yeah. Well, it was kind of a bind for me to be in because, men are just awful in their late teens, early 20s. That's probably like the worst they ever are, I think. They tend to get a little more civilized and learn a few things as they go along, but the most appalling behavior is, what you find like in high school or college. And, I saw the disgusting, realities in front of me. And so I could identify with who in your right mind, if you have any, reality check going on, why would you choose to be with a man when you could choose to be with a woman? So I was very aware of that, but I felt I should identify as bisexual because I was capable of being sexually attracted to men. So, that's why I really couldn't say anything, because I kind of felt like, well, on one hand, like all these women who are upholding the glory of the lesbian choice, are completely justified. Yeah, I think that contributed to my being more inhibited. I don't know if I would call it feeling oppressed or not, but, if I had been rabidly lesbian, I probably would have felt more like I could fit in and be approaching more other women there.
So this is an example of where diversity was not so great in terms of acceptance.
I've seen very few groups that were really perfect in all of these ways. I think the group that sustained the peace camp did really well, all things considered. I don't know of very many groups that could have done better at taking all these different issues in consideration and manifesting them in the ideal way. That's a lot to ask. We all had to deal with our own limitations and to do the best we could, and that that was the good thing about the peace camp, is that we're always challenging ourselves and engaging in some critical thinking and dialogue. I saw a lot of that. The other thing about the peace camp, I bet you the house, which I don't have, that I am not the first woman to say this. The first time I ever saw a woman wearing a yarmulke. Am I the first to say this?
Yes.
Yeah, that was hard for me. Even though I am Jewish, I had a very negative opinion about the Jewish religion. So I only knew like the worst ways about, I didn't know all the goddess-centered ways you could be Jewish. And especially at that time, where I'm connecting with, the pagan way and the awareness of the elements and all this kind of thing. And it freaked me out to see this woman wearing a yarmulke. And also probably even the worst of it was, like the internalized Jewish terror, like, my God, why don't you just paint a bullseye on and say, kill me now! Here I am! For your target practice pleasure, just kill me right now! Like, don't do that. Yeah, that was hard, and yeah.
Did you talk to her about it?
No, I was keeping a low profile there. What can I say? I have one other memory I want to share. That just hanging out on the front porch sometimes, and these men would go by in their pickup truck, and they would yell out, "Calm, he dies." I thought that only happened in the movies. This is real life. That was an education.
Were you ever fearful at the camp?
Yeah. Oh, and the weirdness with the waves or whatever that they thought they were
Zapping.
doing. The zapping. Yeah. I started feeling a little bit funny, but I could never tell because my health has never been outstanding. But then when I went back to the peace camp for a visit, like the year later, I felt really not good. Just like woozy, kind of sickish, I don't know. Yeah, that was scary. The government assaulting us, or the strong possibility, was scary. And, I think I was more worried about that. I mean, and then I thought they were like genetically breeding these mosquitoes just for us or something to really... I mean, I've never seen mosquitoes that big in my life. They're very huge. I didn't really worry about, like some man sneaking onto the property and knifing me in my tent at night or anything, but it was just kind of like a vague, like a feeling of generalized threat being out there. So I think I've been chewing over what I got from the camp experience. I think I really came away with the knowledge like that we have a truth, and we have the ability to connect with all of these forces greater than ourselves, and we don't need to be intimidated by the oppressive forces around us. That was a real gift.
Any other memories?
Well, it was really neat one time. I had gone back to Cornell for some reason that summer, and there was somebody petitioning, and so I signed her petition. And under address, I just wrote Seneca Women's Encampment for Peace and Justice. And she happened to look at it. She goes, "Wow, you live there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I do." I felt like finally I'm one of the in group.